Good morning, church. This morning I want to talk to you about process and progress. Is there a difference? Is there a difference between process and progress? Well, I looked up the definitions for process and the definition for progress. And here's what the definition of process is. A series of actions or steps taken in order to achieve a particular goal. Pretty good, pretty good. How about progress? Forward or onward movement toward a destination. That's very similar to process, isn't it?
Yes.
How many ever seen a process report? No. It's always called a progress report. Do you know why? I thought about it long and hard. Why is it called a progress report and not a process report? Well, I'll tell you. We all want to see progress. None of us want to see process. But God is interested in the process more than He is at your destination, because your destination is with Him. Now, if in your process on this earth you are with Him, you will progress and get to heaven. Amen? Amen. Good. Today I want to look at Judges chapter 7. I gave the children just a snippet of what Judges 7 talks about. But to you, the more mature crowd, I want to give you the rest of the story. Can we do that? And in Judges chapter 7, we've got to remember what happened in Judges chapter 6. In Judges chapter 6, Gideon was a nobody. Yes?
Yes.
Nobody knew who Gideon was. And anybody remember what tribe he was from? The tribe of Manasseh. Now, the tribe of Manasseh wasn't a big tribe to begin with. And Gideon was the youngest in his family. His father, Gideon's father, put up an Asherah pole for Baal. So Gideon was really on the wrong side of things. Well, at least his father was. But then God came to Gideon as he was in a wine press thrashing wheat. Anybody ever seen or heard of how to thrash wheat? Go ahead.
They take the stalks, they beat them so the heads come off, and
Yep.
the seeds come off, and then after that they have to shake it out to get this outer skin off.
Yep, exactly. After that, what they do, they take a fork and they throw it up in the air, usually with a little bit of breeze, so the chaff leaves. Now, Gideon was in a wine press. How much wind is there in a wine press? Not much. There's none. But desperate times call for desperate measures. Mind you, all around them, because, see, the book of Judges not only talks about the judges that were in the land of Israel, but it also talks about how God judged Israel because of what they did. They were not obedient to God, and they were not obedient to what God wanted them to do. See, God, when they entered the land, God told them, do not follow the gods of the people who I drove away from you. Don't follow their gods. Don't do what they did. They got me upset. Don't get me upset. Bottom line. That's pretty basic. Keep my commandments and you will inherit the land. Simple. There was only 10 commandments. We came up with the rest. So as Gideon is the lowest place where they can find cover and a place where he can thrash wheat, an angel of the Lord, some people say this was a Christophany. We remember Christophany is a sighting of Jesus in the Old Testament. This angel, I want to say it's an angel, but I wasn't there, so Gideon only knows that God knows. This angel comes to him and says, "Peace to you, you great man of valor." He gives him a greeting and he calls him to what he's going to be, not to what he is. But that's a different sermon. I'm not going to preach on that today. Of course, Gideon looks around and says, "Where is this strong man you're talking about? Not me. I'm the least of my brothers. I am the least." And Manasseh is the least of all of Israel. But then he tests God. God, if it's really you, now I'm going to tell you, don't test God like this, because God will not respond to you in such circumstances. Better yet, I'll tell you, I'm really debating how I should put this out there, because I always say, call people to church, call people to church, call people to church. And I'm going to tell you, keep calling people to come to church. Keep calling people to come to God. But God does not need people. That's harsh. God does not need people. We need God to need us. See, Gideon was not with his father when it came to the Asherah pole. He was not with his father. He was against Baal. And in his heart, he was not with his father and what his father was doing. And how do we know that? Well, he cut down the Asherah pole. He cut it right down. He was not with his father. So that's how you know that in his heart, he needed God to need him. How else do you know that he needed God to need him? Well, he was doing something for his family, for his people, by thrashing wheat in a wine press. That's hard work. And because Gideon's heart was with God and was turned to God, God chose him. God chooses people that their hearts are turned towards him. See, a few months ago, May 25th to be exact, we had this great, beautiful, huge altar call at the Big E with Franklin Graham leading the call. Over 680 people raised their hands and stood up and were prayed for. That's the official count. Many others gave their lives to the Lord unofficially. But over 680 gave their hearts to the Lord officially. How many do you think are serving God today? I don't know. If you guys remember, we had an influx of people come right after because their hearts caught on fire for Jesus, right? But some decided to go back to where they came from. And there's nothing we can do to keep them here. We live in a free country. We live with a free will. God doesn't make us do anything. See, God doesn't need us. We need God to need us. I was talking to a young lady the other day, and she says, "Pastor, each time I see you, you have one thing on your mind." I said, "Really? What is it?" She says, "You always call me to church." Well, I only speak from what's inside my heart. And, we have this conversation, and her boyfriend was there, and she turned to me and said, "Didn't I tell you Pastor always calls me to church?" I said, "Well, besides me calling you to church, we had this other conversations, a number of other conversations, but the one thing that sticks in your mind is me calling you to church. Maybe it's not me calling you to church, maybe it's God calling you to church. Because if that's one thing that you remember from all of our conversations, well, all of you have conversations with me, well, I don't know, not on a regular basis, but on a regular basis. Do I call you to church? But if that's one thing that sticks on your mind or sticks inside your heart, that Pastor wants me in church, Well, maybe that's not me speaking. Maybe that's God speaking through me. Yes? And here, Gideon saw this man call him into service from nothing to being a leader of the whole Israel clan. Can you imagine that? Going from nobody, going to somebody. Judges chapter 6 finishes up abruptly with Gideon asking God for signs and wonders. And God was faithful because he saw his heart, that it was genuine. And he showed him signs and wonders on the cloud. Judges chapter 7 opens up with these words. Thank you, Neil. Early in the morning, Jerubbaal. What is Jerubbaal? Gideon, but he is against Baal. Bottom line is, he is against Baal. We call him Gideon. And his men camped at the spring of Herod. The camp of Midian was north of them in the valley near the hill of Morah. Now see, from chapter 6 to chapter 7, God doesn't explain to us how Gideon collected all the men and how Gideon did this or that. Because that's process. You see where I'm going with this? That's a process. We all go through a process. Some of us are still going through a process even now. Some are pregnant. She's smiling at me. It's a process. We all want the result. We're waiting for the progress. Verse number 2. The Lord said to Gideon, "You have too many men." Greg, there were too many helpers yesterday. We had a lot of helpers. But we had too many helpers. Actually, we didn't. We had just the right amount of helpers. I'll get to the point why God said you have too many men. Verse number 2 again. The Lord said to Gideon, "You have too many men. I cannot deliver Midian into their hands. Or Israel would boast against me. My own strength has saved me. Now announce to the army, anyone who trembles with fear may turn back and leave Mount Gilead." So 22,000 men left, while 10,000 remained. I'm not very good at math. I'm very good at math. But 22,000 plus 10,000, that's 32,000. So Gideon was appointed by God, and God gave him, Gideon made a phone call, and 32,000 people show up. And God says to Gideon, "You have too many men." Now, does anybody, before we continue reading this passage, anybody remember how many people were for Midian? 135,000. 135,000 people were of the enemy. If you do the math really quickly in your head, that's 4.5 times the amount that showed up to help Gideon. Greg, I want to talk to you a lot today because you're right here, right in the line of fire. Let's just say we had 135,000 things to move in your house. That's about right. And 32,000 people showed up. And then God spoke to you and said, "You have too many people." What would you say?
That's crazy.
Me too! That's exactly what I said. God, there's 135,000 of the enemy, and 32,000 show up, and you say there's too many men? Well, me being human that I am, is anybody else human in here? Oh, good. I thought I was the only one. God said, me being human, I think so. Well, okay, 10,000 leave. Well, actually, no. It said 22,000 people got up and left. All because they had one thing in common. The thing was fear. They were afraid. But God says there's more. Verse number 4, please. But the Lord said to Gideon, there are still too many men. Greg, I want to look at you again. 22,000 people just left. We got 10,000 people left to carry 135,000 things out of your house. And God speaks to you and says, you have too many people. What do you say?
That's still crazy.
That's more crazy. That is more crazy. God, when we had 32,000, we could do, each man can take 4.5 people out, or 4.5 things out of the house. Maybe. But Lord, with 10,000 people carrying 135,000 things out, anybody good at math? 13.5 people per person. So each person would have to do 13.5 trips to get things out of Greg's house, instead of 4.5 trips. Can you imagine that? And God says, you know what? There's still way too many people. Verse number 4 again. But the Lord said to Gideon, there are still too many people. Take them to the water, and I will send them out from there. If I say this one shall go with you, he shall go. But if I say this one shall not go with you, he shall not go. So Gideon took the men down to the water. There the Lord told him, separate those who lap the water with their tongues as a dog laps from those who kneel down to drink. 300 of them drank from cupped hands, lapping like dogs. All the rest got down on their knees to drink. The Lord said to Gideon, with these 300 men that lapped, I will save you and give you the Midianites into your hands. Let the others go home. Lord, your math is not adding up to me. Now, I like math. There's 135,000 of the enemy of the Midianites, and God thins the crowd from 32,000 down to 10,000, down to 300. I'm not even going to do the math of that one. But that's 130. I'm not going to do the math. I lost the number. But that's about 100 people. Sorry.
300.
You do them at 300 per person?
Oh, no.
No, 970 left. How many, the ratio of, somebody do the math, 300 divided by 135,000. How many is that? I lost the number, I should have written down. But a lot of people, okay? Exactly, there's a lot of people coming against just 300. 135,000. You know how big is 135,000? How many know how many people live in Windsor Locks? About 50,000. So 3 cities the size of Windsor Locks are coming in against 300. That's not very good odds. Lord, what are you doing? Why are you doing this to me? If I was Gideon, of course. But God said, you have too many people. Well, before we can continue, I'd like to turn your attention to Deuteronomy chapter 20, the first 8 verses. Now, Deuteronomy, we all know that's the law, yes? The book of the law tells us, when you go to war against your enemies and see horses and chariots and an army greater than yours, do not be afraid. Can I hear you say, do not be afraid? Because you have too many people. Because the Lord, your God, who brought you out of Egypt, will be with you. When you are about to go into battle, the priest shall come forward and address the army. He shall say, hear Israel, today you are going into a battle against your enemies. Do not be faint-hearted or afraid. Do not panic or be afraid by them. I want to keep that right there. The biggest issue with anyone or anything, any army, myself, yourself, is fear. If you have fear, you cannot move forward. If the fear has captured you, you are done. The only thing that you can do is get somebody else infected. And God said in the book of the law, He said, if you are afraid, go home. It is better for you to go home and get some rest. You know, on Tuesday I wasn't feeling good. Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday I wasn't feeling good. But I had a couple of pastors, Pastor Earl and a couple other pastors, pray for me. And Friday night I was helping Greg and Angie move. Power of prayer. Was I afraid? Yeah, I didn't think I was going to be able to help them. I had fear in me, so I was resting. But I did something more. I had other people pray for me. Yes, it took me Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday to get help. Yeah, I'm a little slow sometimes. But yes, I did get help. I did get rest. Where do I find my rest? In God. God is my help. Where does my help come from? From the Lord, the maker of heavens and earth. Not from other people, but it was the power of prayer that healed me. I can tell you off camera what I felt. I shared it in the prayer room this morning. Mind you, I shared it in the prayer room because we were about to pray. So I wasn't going to infect anybody with fear. But God said, if you have fear, you can go home. It's okay. Gideon, you have too many people. Greg, do we have too many people? No. Anyone have any fear?
No.
Anyone have any doubts?
No.
I think there's a couple that have doubts. Me included. But if... Well, let's continue. Let's continue reading because I'm getting too excited for this. Verse number 4. For the Lord your God is the one who goes with you to fight for you against your enemies, to give you victory. See? You don't fight, you don't do your own battles. God does them for you, but you need to not be afraid. You need to stand strong. You need to be courageous. It is your job to be strong and courageous. You need God to need you. If you have fear, God, do you really want to use me? Say, no, I'm not sure. If you're not sure you want to be used by me, I can't force myself upon you. If you have fear, the process cannot continue. There won't be any progress, I promise you that. If you're not willing to go through the process, you won't get a progress report. You'll never get to the end. You'll never get to your goal because fear will keep you captive. How many want to be feared by captivated by fear? Anybody? No, I pray not. I pray that the Holy Spirit would break those chains of fear over you right now. Those chains of fear, they're gone. And if we got too many people, if we got people who are fighting against us, well, maybe God needs to remove them. Bottom line. Here's what happened in Numbers chapters 13 and 14. We're just going to choose a few verses. See, God told the children of Israel when they came out of captivity, they came out from captivity, and God said, you know what? It's a straight shot from here. Send. Well, let's read it together. Numbers chapter 13, the first 2 verses. The Lord said to Moses, send some men to explore the land of Canaan, which I am giving to the Israelites. From each ancestral tribe, send one of its leaders. We're not going to continue reading, but you can read it at home. That's Numbers chapter 13 and 14 if you want to write that down. And you can read what fear did to them. We're just going to graze through it, but with a few verses. God said, there's the promised land. I promised it to your ancestors 400 plus years ago. Go, send your leaders, and they will look at it, and they will raise up your spirit. They will give you courage that, yes, what I said is true. How many know that God's promises are true? Anybody? Yes. God's promises never go unanswered. God's promises are yes and amen. But fear will take all those promises away. Fear is your enemy. How bad of an enemy is fear? Well, let's read verses 27 to 28. This is in Numbers chapter 13. They gave Moses this account. Those are the spies that came back from viewing the land that God promised them. We went into the land to which you sent us, and it does flow with milk and honey. Here is its fruit. Don't go any further. So God's promises are true, yes and amen. I was going to die, but I chose not to. So God kept his promise. 12 men, 12 elders, 12 tribe leaders, young men of course, went and they found that the land does flow with milk and honey. Great, let's go get it. Right? How many are ready to go to get to the land of milk and honey? Anybody? Whoa, hold on. Verse 28 comes up. There's that ugly word, but. But the people who live there are powerful, and the cities are fortified and very large. We even saw descendants of Anak there. Now imagine yesterday, we pull up with this U-Haul truck to Greg's house. Oh my God, that's a huge house. Oh my God, did you see this house by the way? It's huge. How many rooms did you have in that house?
They came on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
6 rooms. Do you know how many truckloads that will take to get rid of all that stuff from that house and bring it to the other house? 6 rooms. It's a beautiful house. And the house that they're moving to is even nicer. It's bigger. It's got 3 floors. But it's so big, how are we going to get 6 rooms out of that thing and put it into the other house? Oh my God, that's it, I quit. That's when Greg was said, silly, I think we have too many people. Because I would not be willing to go through the process of gently removing the belongings from this house, putting them nicely into the U-Haul truck, transporting it to the other house, unloading it very gently, and bringing it into the new house. Greg was very true to his word. The new house in Angie, that new house is amazing. But can you imagine the work that is necessary to put in? That's a huge house. It's got over 2,000 square feet. It's a huge house. I changed my mind. Greg, don't call on me. I'm not coming. Greg said, I think we have too many people. They can go home. I know you got a sermon to prepare for tomorrow, and you can practice at home. But no. With faith, all things are possible. And a couple of men, of course. See, Greg did not need me. He had other people. But I needed Greg to need me. God doesn't need me, but I need God to need me. Because I wanted to help. God, I want to be in your service. I want to serve you. I am willing to do whatever it takes. Here's a mistake that we made yesterday. Angie bought a case of water for one house and a case of water for the other house. So what did we do? We moved all the water to the new house. But God provides water, right? Faucet or whatever. But I needed them to need me. I need God to need me. If I don't want to be used by God, God will not use me. Once I was asked by, I don't remember, a young man or a young woman, this was on Friday night, and they said, what does it mean to be used by God? I don't want to be used by anybody. That just sounds wrong. Well, my answer was simple. Do you watch TV? Yeah. Have you ever seen a McDonald's commercial? Yeah. They're using you. Well, they're not. Yeah, they are. They're using your senses to want that burger, to want those fries, right? They're using you. So you're going to be used by somebody no matter what. Might as well be used by God. There's a result from being used by God. McDonald's? Yeah. I got enough. Maybe if I go to see our dear sister and she serves us great breakfast, I won't have this. But McDonald's, everything that they cook is cooked with hydrogenated oil. Did I say that right? I think I did. It sounded right. But I need to be used. I want to be used by God. I need God to need me. Was that confusing enough? I need God to need me. I want to be used by God. I want to be in this process. So one day, when I get to heaven, the progress report gets opened up and God said, well, this was the process. You know, I thought, well, we had a teacher here. Well, we have another teacher right in front of us. Math, the process is math, and you got an A for math. History, well, you did okay, you got a D minus. The process is known as math or history or English or whatever the process is. For you, it may be going through a trial. For you, it may be going through a financial difficulty. The process that you're going through right now is just a process. The progress report, or the progress, is the end goal. And I hope you pass. I'm praying that you'll pass. Well, let's continue to read verse 30 and 31. Then Caleb silenced the people before Moses and said, we should go up and take possession of this land, for we can certainly do this. Stop right there. Remember the two spies that said we can do it? What are the names? Joshua and Caleb. One of my friends' names was Caleb. That's how I know Caleb. But Caleb said, shh, quiet. Hold on. Yes, the houses are huge. Yes, we've seen some huge people. But God said, God was faithful in the process thus far. God said that in this land that milk and honey flows, so might as well continue to follow God and continue to receive His blessing. Might as well, right? See, the Bible tells us, the work that was started in you, He will bring it to completion. What happens if you have doubt in between there? From the beginning of the process to the end of the progress. It's a vicious cycle. I'm not telling you that I never have doubts. I'm not telling you that I don't have fear. I'm not telling you because I just told you, last Tuesday I had an issue and I didn't deal with it until Friday. But when I dealt with it on Friday, you know how much relief that was? Ask my wife, she'll tell you. But if I would have dealt with the issue on Tuesday, that came up on Tuesday, I wouldn't have to wait until Friday and feel horrible in the process. All I had to do was call the prayer line, ask for prayer. Don't have to be very specific, just say, not feeling good, please pray. Was that hard? How long did that take? 5 seconds? Let's call it a minute. Because we have a minute of wisdom. Let's call it a minute. If I would have taken that minute, how many minutes would I have saved? 4 days. Well, 3 days, 3.5 days. But who's counting, really? Who's the math wizard in here? Sometimes we're not willing to spend that 1 minute, and we're just like the children of Israel. Go to the next verse, verse 31. But the men who had gone up with him, we can't attack those people. They are sharper than we are. Sometimes our fear, our doubt, say, it's too big. Can't do it. I know we serve a God who can do it, but no. God has never dealt with a headache. God doesn't get headaches. He can't take away my headache because, that's not, maybe I'm just too small in the kingdom of God for God to even worry about my headache. I mean, God, American country, the country of America, the United States of America to deal with. There's Trump. He needs to stop Trump from tweeting and saying nonsense, and he needs to get Congress and the Senate to work together to pass some laws. And God has a lot on his plate. My headache is not even worth bugging God for. What is that? Well, that's fear. Because I am afraid of bothering God. That's fear. When that came to me, I said, what? That is fear. I am afraid of disturbing God. Well, how many have had small children? You had small children before? All of you? I know that you have. Your 2 or 3-year-old, how many times do they say mom or dad to get your attention? Mom, 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 mom. Yes? Or dad, 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 dad. How many times? A million. See? She's got children right now. Are you bothered by that?
Actually, yes, sometimes.
Do you answer?
Eventually.
So if our children don't have a fear of bothering us and being a bother to us, they will do anything to get an answer from us. Why are we afraid to bother God? Because we're not willing to go through the process. Because God's got bigger things to worry about than me. As you all know that we've been studying the fruit of the Spirit on a Wednesday night. But one of the first things that we talked about, now this is a month and a half, 2 months ago, was grapes. I had a few pictures of grapes up there, but I won't show them because William's not back there, and I forgot to show Neil how to do it. I want to show you grapes while they're blooming, while there's beautiful fruit, and what happens to those grapes or the vines when harvest season is over. Anybody know what happens to the vines when the harvest is over?
They dry up.
They dry up. What else happens? They get pruned. Hold on. Why are we pruning these beautiful vines that just gave us so much fruit? Why?
So the energy goes back into the fruit and not into growing more vine.
So the energy goes into producing fresh vine to produce fresh fruit. If the dead or the fearful or the doubting vine, well, I produced fruit last time, I don't know if I'm going to produce fruit this time around. Whiny fruit, whiny fruit, I'm sorry. Those corny jokes of mine, I apologize. But if that vine took all that energy, all that juice to revive itself, no, you can believe me, God done it before, God will do it again. Sometimes God says, there's too many people. You need to prune. Sometimes the unbelief, the doubt, the fear needs to leave before God can revive this vine and this beautiful fruit to grow again. I don't like this message more than any of you do. I want to see this church filled with people. But sometimes God says some pruning needs to happen. The vine will stand. God is not changing. Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever. God doesn't change. That vine that produced the beautiful grapes, that's not changing. But sometimes that chaff needs to be expelled. I don't like this message any more than any of you do. When God gave me this message, well, He started giving me this message 2 weeks ago. I was like, I don't want to talk about that. I really, really don't. Well, God took me to another church to preach in another church last week, so I have to preach this message this week. I said, God, I need you to need me. So whatever you tell me to say, I will say. When we talk about Gideon, I'll talk about Gideon. When we talk about Samson, I'll talk about Samson. When we talk about whoever, I will talk about whoever. I will do what you tell me to do. I want to see that fruit. How many want to see this church filled with fruit? With fresh, juicy fruit? Everybody. Now, it's time for us to prune our hearts. It's time for us to prune our hearts. How many heard of David Wilkerson before? David Wilkerson? Yes, that's the book he wrote.
Times Square Church.
Times Square Church, there you go. Thank you. He said that the judgment has to start with the house of God in that book. The judgment of God doesn't start in the world. It starts with the house of God. You know why? Because in order for us to have this fruit, we need to get rid of some things. Fear, gotta go. Doubt, gotta go. See, Caleb, even though he was outnumbered, told his people, quiet. God was faithful. None of us have been to the land of Canaan. None of us could have known the fruit that was there. None of us. But God promised. And of course, when we read, they were carrying lots of grapes. When we see pictures of them carrying, this huge vine of grapes, we all see that, right? I believe it's true. If God was faithful before, why are we fearful now? If God brought me through my last issue, why can't God bring me through this new issue? See, on top of my fireplace, on the mantle, we have this beautiful saying. Don't tell God how big your problem is. Tell your problem how big your God is. Don't tell God how big your problem is. God, I got this huge issue. Yeah, I know, to you it seems big. But you know what I've done? I've created the earth. Beat that. But God, I got so many people saying so many things about me. Really? They crucified my son. You know how many things that they said? You know how many things they still say? How much abuse does Muhammad take? Don't say that, okay? Just don't say that. Don't go there, because you'll have everybody, every liberal in the country yelling at you and screaming at you. But we can portray Jesus as a homosexual on TV, and that's fine. You know no difference? We as Christians, we know that that's not who our Jesus is. We don't have to defend God. In the Old Testament, there are many portrayals where, whether it be Baal, whether it be any other false god, they would all bow down in front of our God. And let's look at what happened at the altar when they were stabbing themselves, remember? he's God. Maybe he went to sleep. Our God doesn't sleep. Does our God sleep? He doesn't. The Bible tells us he doesn't slumber or sleep. Well, maybe he took a vacation. Well, their God took a vacation because he never showed up. But our God, with a prayer, he answered with fire. There was no water. You know, when we were loading the truck yesterday, if somebody would have just poured some water on the ground, I would have jumped on the ground and just let it pour in my mouth or something, because we needed some water. The whole country was dry, but Elijah said, get the rest of the water and pour it out. Sometimes you need to give to get. See, God's math is not like our math. God, 32,000 against 135, that's a big maybe. You get too many people. God, 10,000 against 135,000 says, whoa, it's a little scarier. That's 13.5 to 1. Still got too many people. Okay, God, that's not those 9,700 people. Okay, we can let those 300 go. No. Let the 9,700 go so you can win with these 300. Are you sure, God? There's 135,000 men on the other side, willing, able, not fearful, to take us out. And you want us to go against them with 300? God, the math doesn't add up. Well, in God's kingdom, math doesn't add up because God is not interested in our math. How do you get more when you tithe to church? Giving 10% of your income to the church, how do you have more at the end of the day? In our math, it doesn't work. In God's math, you get an abundance. There's not just enough, there's more than enough. I don't know how that works. But see, if I understood how that worked, it wouldn't be a supernatural thing. Right? If I can put it down on paper and explain the Trinity, would that be God? Would that be supernatural? Absolutely not. Well, I can give you lots of ideas. Tithing, I can give you lots of ideas. I can give you tons of examples how it works. But I could never fully understand or fully comprehend God's math. Because His understanding is beyond our understanding. See, we are interested in the progress and the final goal. God is interested in the process. As we finish this morning, I want to finish with the song that's called Waymaker. See, fear is a liar. Fear will take away your joy, your love, your patience, every fruit of the Spirit, your kindness. Have you ever seen a person who's in fear be kind? Absolutely not. They're shivering with fear. There's no time to be kind. There's no time to think about the fruits of the Spirit. Let me give you this acronym. Fear, F-E-A-R, forget everything and run. I thought that was good. But there's a better one. Face everything and rise. Let God fight your battles. See, our God, He is the way maker. Not me, not you, Him. We need Him to need us. We need to put that fear behind us and let God make a way. Because whatever door God opens, no man will close. And every door that God closes, no man will open. If God is putting on your heart to serve Him, do it. He'll make a way. He is our way maker. He's more interested in the process than your progress. When it feels that you're losing people all around you, those are anchors are holding you back. God is doing some trimming. He is the way maker.